Wonderful.
All right, good evening, everybody. It's 6 o'clock, I think. So what's your computer say, Hollis?
6 o'clock on the nose.
Okay, so it's 6 o'clock, so we'll start the meeting. We'll call it to order. I just make sure my phone wasn't fast. And we have a smaller number of people that I think we've ever had to a board meeting. We've got 12 on here so far tonight, board members, but so glad for each one of you that could join. Thank you for making the effort to be here. And we want to extend a warm welcome to a new face on there, and we'll get to a more formal introduction later, but the new face you see is Dick Isabel from Campobello. So we'll call the meeting to order, and Claudette's on with us taking attendance and minutes. So at this point in time, we would need to ask for any board members who have a conflict of interest to self-declare. Are there any to note? None noted. We'll move on then. We'll be looking to adopt the agenda as circulated in your board package at the first of the week. So you've had it early in time to peruse it. Do we have a motion to adopt as circulated?
So moved.
So moved by Winston. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Second.
I think that was Faith at first.
Heather first.
Heather. Seconded by Heather. All in favor of adopting as circulated? If you're on camera, you can just raise your hand. And in the boardroom, you can raise your hand.
All those.
All right, then we'll go to the phones. Heather?
Yes.
Wayne?
Yes.
Yuri? We'll go back to
Did
Terry.
you say
Faith?
Jerry?
I did say Terry, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry,
Faith?
I didn't know.
That's okay. Faith?
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
so we have unanimous adoption of the agenda. Thank you. Anybody contrary minded that I might have missed? None to know? Okay, thank you. Then we'd be looking to adopt the minutes of the June 25th, 2020 meeting, which were also circulated. So we would be looking for a motion to adopt as circulated. Do we have a motion to adopt as circulated of those minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Annette is moving. Annette is moving. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Terry, thanks. Okay. Any questions about those minutes? Questions or discussion about the minutes? None to note. Okay, all in favor? If you're on camera, you can raise your hand so Claudette can count you. In the boardroom, you can raise your hand. Everybody's in the boardroom, it has their hand raised, and then we'll go to the phones. Thank you. Heather?
Yes.
Thank you. Wayne?
Yes.
Thank you. Terry?
Yes.
Faith?
Yes.
Anybody contrary minded that I may have missed in looking around or asking? None noted. Okay, with that, we have unanimous adoption of the minutes of the June 25th meeting. So we'll move on to the next portion, and that's the business arising from previous meetings. We were updated that Campobello is going to have a new face coming to us, and it's the supervisor, Dick Isabel. So I'm going to turn that over to Hollis to give a more formal, I've never met Dick, so I'll turn it to Hollis to give us more of an update or a formal introduction, or ask if you'd like to address this, whatever you want to do. Go ahead.
Well, this is my first meeting too.
Okay.
So maybe we'll let Dick introduce himself.
Absolutely.
Yes, probably just to explain why I've been appointed the supervisor for Campobello Island, which is an appointment made by the by order in council through the Minister of Local Government. And it's simply because, unfortunately, there were 3 of the 5 council members resigned in the rural community of Campobello Island between Christmas and May, when there was supposed to be, of course, municipal elections again in May, and until COVID-19 upset that apple cart. So pending an election in the rural community of Campobello Island, I will be acting as with the same powers as a mayor and council would normally have in that rural community. I'm not a stranger to this world of service commissions, et cetera, the regional service commissions. I spent about 7 years in provincial government working on files related to the business. And in fact, know a number of you folks who are part of this meeting today through those days in provincial government. And then my last 6 working years were as the chief administrative officer for the town of Oromocto. So again, a fair bit of local government experience. So I'm really pleased to be back into the business again for a short period of time, again, until there's a by-election for the rural community. So thank you for the welcome.
Thank you, Dick. It's a pleasure to have you join us, and we certainly send you a warm welcome. Thank you for finding us a great group. All right, so I'll extend a warm welcome to them. So update on possible municipal insurance bulk discount. And that was something that I believe came out of the RCO committee. And specifically the municipalities were wondering about some cost sharing on some of these things. So Hollis, can you update us on that?
Sure. Go ahead, work my computer.
Who's-
There it is. So we've done a little bit of work here. Luke Kane from Kane Insurance, that's the company that we've been dealing with on our insurance needs here. He's offered to give a presentation on collectively giving municipal insurance, and you could do that to either the RCO committee or the board itself, whatever you'd like to do. We've contacted some other brokers, and the general advice is basically the same. Municipalities are likely already insured by the same company, but maybe going through different brokers. So that's probably going to be more discussion. And for health plan insurance, the Municipal Advisory Corporation already gets us bulk discounts. Our Regional Service Commission already gets our health insurance through that. It's run by a board of directors, of which our own Claudette McLean is the director of. Some of the other municipalities in our region already go through the MAC board. That'd be Blacks Harbor, St. George, and St. Andrews. But if municipalities are looking for health insurance, I know it was a big savings for
Could
us.
I just interrupt you just for a second because of the type of discussion you're having? Could you let those 2 people into the waiting room? I believe one of the mayors is waiting,
Oh,
just because this may be important to them. Thank you.
to Alan McCaffrey.
Oh, he tried to get in twice. He really wants in.
Thanks for letting me know. So yeah, if anybody in the municipality is interested in that, I suggest contacting them. It was a good savings for the Regional Service Commission, and I'm pretty sure the other municipalities are enjoying some savings by going through them. The good part about the MAC board is for health insurance is that you're drawing from a large pool, right? So it's not just the few employees of the village or town that you're dealing with. It's based on the pool of everybody that's in this particular. So it saves you from a lot of ups and downs. So that's where I am on that so far.
All right, is that it? So if you are a mayor in the area and maybe you come in late like Alan, if you missed part of that, if there's just updates, certainly give Hollis a call and discuss what they found out so far about the cooperative insurance quotes that they've been working on. And he'll update you on what they found out. Are there any questions for Hollis about that?
What do you think, Alice? Wouldn't it be better for that to be presented to the board
Yeah.
rather than just to the one committee?
I do think the board should get presentations of that size, simply because even if it's mostly affects just the remaining municipalities that aren't already, it's good for the entire board to be aware of what the commission is collectively working on. So if there's a presentation like that, I certainly would love to see it come to the whole board. That can come to the executive committee for sure to discuss. Any questions, other questions for Hollis? No? Okay, we'll move on. This is
Before-
something that.
hello?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to be at this meeting? Is this not the board meeting?
This is the board meeting, yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, I thought so. Okay.
You're just too busy, Alan. You're just too
Oh.
busy. I'm glad you could.
Oh, there's everybody now. No, I was only seeing 2 or 3 people. Now I see everybody. Sorry.
You thought you'd logged into a committee meeting.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. No, you're at the board meeting. There you go. Well, glad you could join.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? You are in the right place. You're with the right people. That's good. All right. So then we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Climate Change Adaptation ETF, Environmental Trust Fund. That stands for grant presentation. And Alex Henderson, our planning director, is going to present that. And this is coming through the work of the PMC, Planning Management Committee. So Alex, welcome and thank you for sharing.
Thank you. So Madam Chair, I'm just going to start by going through, maybe I'll just do a bit of a background, give everybody orientation to date. So some people haven't been part of the discussion, but climate change adaptation has been talked about this board for, I think, 3 years now. And there was a climate change adaptation plan done for the whole region, which included all the municipalities and their individual plans. It was accomplished by Eastern Charlotte Waterways with support from the Regional Service Commission 2 years ago. And the plan is just complete more recently earlier this year. In it, they had some recommendations for the Service Commission, some pretty specific actions and work items for us to do. This was brought to the board earlier this spring, along with a opportunity to utilize a $45,000 grant through the Environmental Trust Fund to do that work that Eastern Charlotte Waterways had identified for us. The board discussed it, and what you discussed was that, well, this may be good. We need to think about how this is going to expand your mandate, and maybe the best thing would be to look at something like a derivative plan, so you don't need to adopt wholesale the plan developed by Waterways, which is it's a lengthy document. So what I did was, in the interim, I worked on a short plan, kind of policy, with some of the action items identified, and I'm going to go through that in a moment. We also have a little infographic that shows what it looks like. So if I can share my screen, I think I can.
Sure.
Infographic here. Everybody can see that?
Yeah.
The Southwestern New Brunswick Service Commission Climate Adaptation Plan. This is kind of giving you a broad overview of what the mandate might look like if the board was to accept this. So climate change collaborative, establish collaborative with stakeholders, different sectors, education, communication, Indigenous involvement, talk about that in a moment, and assist with other adaptation projects. So there's critical pieces of infrastructure and LSDs and municipalities. They have it all identified in their own plans. And the critical pieces of infrastructure there that need to get improved on before we get a next big major storm event related to climate change. So there's some key actions that need to happen: communication, collaboration, education. That's the gist of the mandate. I'm going to go through here and show you what it looks like in a policy language for the board to consider. So this is something you can consider adopting, and I'm going to kind of go through after this what the implications are for this. Well, actually, no, I think Dennis Blair is going to talk about it with the PMC report. So I'll leave it with just an explanation of what this plan policy would look like for the board. So it kind of looks similar to the plan format you had with the recreation policy. So we're trying to keep a kind of a similar format for the board to adopt. So you have, which divisions would be responsible for implementing it, when it was adopted by the board, kind of left it blank, not sure when it's revised by the board, what the objective is. So to provide direction on the purpose and priorities of the commission with regard to advancing best practices for climate change adaptation throughout the region. Application of scope. So where does it link in with your overall strategic plan? So these are the spots it links in. Where is it derived from? So this plan is derived from the Eastern Charlotte Waterways big document they put out. And who's responsible for carrying it out? Well, the board adopts the policy. It's carried out through the executive director within defined budgets and other parameters. And we would be responsible for the day-to-day of this. And the policy is simple. There's 3 policies, but there's an appendix with more specific actions. Policy 1.1, the commission serves as climate change adaptation facilitator of actions contained in Appendix A. Policy 1.2, pursuant to the policy 1.1, a short-term contractor hired with environmental trust fund money initiate the objectives contained in Appendix A. And policy 1.3, the last policy, that the commission have regard for the recommendations contained with the Eastern Charlotte Waterway Plan in any future regional plan adopted by the commission. As you know, we don't have regional planning in its full, the full vision of regional planning hasn't been put in place yet by the province. But if and when it does, we should really take that work seriously, because we helped secure them funding through Federation of Canadian Municipalities to get that work done. A lot of very good research in it. So if we go back to the policy 1.1 and policy 1.2, that the commission be the region's climate change adaptation facilitator, meaning there's a bit of a responsibility the board would be taking on there. So this was identified by in the McKendy report, for example, on regional service commissions, that service commissions are ideally positioned to be this facilitator for climate change adaptation. And the province agreed by identifying funds for this type of work in Environmental Trust Fund, which carries over to policy 2. We have the money. We applied for it preemptively, and we actually need a decision from the board if we'll accept the money or not. If you want to take on this mandate, you got the money to start the implementation of Appendix A. And I'll leave that to, you don't need to make a decision after my presentation. Leave that to Dennis Blair and the PMC report to further that discussion. But a decision would have to be made before the end of this month, because we took a little bit more time with this one. So the Appendix A, this is the actual actions that would be taken in this plan. Establish the collaborative of regional climate change adaptation with the EMO, member municipalities, regional offices of government of New Brunswick. B, ensure climate change adaptation knowledge is in the hands of all decision makers of infrastructure in the region. C, ensure climate change adaptation knowledge is in the hands of the public at large. D, work with Passamaquoddy First Nation on mapping cultural sites that are at risk of loss due to climate change. Now, of course, this would be subject to their willingness to partner with us on this. They totally could decide not to, and that's okay. I did talk to them a little bit about this, and ECW had kind of floated this idea with them too, but it's not a for sure thing. E, communicate the importance of climate change planning to all audiences. So that's talking about climate change planning generally. F, work with municipalities and local service districts to assist with critical climate change adaptation projects. So I mentioned the idea that there is some pieces of infrastructure which are critical risk of failure and could cause an impact in people's lives if there's a failure due to major storm events, and so on. So a little bit of advocacy around that. That is the plan. It's entirety. It's short.
Alex, Could you repeat your comments on E? They say they wouldn't work with you?
Communicate the importance of
Or D, sorry, D.
work with the Passamaquoddy Nation on mapping culture sites at risk of loss due to climate change. No, I just wanted to emphasize that we obviously can't not force them to participate, but from all indications, I think there would definitely be a willingness for them to want to access our support.
Right. Yeah, no, you shouldn't have to force them. I just thought they would want.
Yeah.
It just seems strange. Okay.
No, and it's just
They have told.
Cultural sites are it's sensitive information. You don't want everybody to know where all the key cultural sites are, so there's a bit of a trust there that would have to be in place, and
I understand. Okay.
you have to
All right.
respect
No.
that. Yeah. So that concludes the whole policy and the plan that the board could take on. You see, it would expand the mandate of the Service Commission, and it's up to you guys if you want to do that. We have funding to do it, but we do need to decide. Essentially, you need to decide this board meeting if you're going to do it or not, because the time on the ETF funding is we have to decide by August 31st if we're accepting the money or not, because we did receive it earlier this spring. So that is it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alex. Are there any questions for Alex about his presentation? Any questions at all? Yeah.
I just
Okay.
have one. How much money are we talking about that's coming in? Is it coming from the province or the federal government? Are we expected to pay a share of that?
Alex?
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. The project is 100% funded through environmental trust fund, so no members would have to contribute extra dollars to make this happen. $45,000. I don't envision us being able to spend all that money, so we will not claim all of it, very likely. Given we had a little bit of a delay getting this going due to COVID and whatnot, it's very likely we'll really just get the work started. Some of the stuff will carry over for staff to keep going, but I don't foresee it as being a very large time commitment once some of the initial work the foundation has been laid for it. So that's pretty much how I see it.
Any other questions for Alex? Any questions from the boardroom? No questions? Thank you, Alex. I appreciate your time and your effort. Thank you. Right, so that's our presentation. And the ETF grant, did he answer your question, Ken? It's not matched. There's no contributions have to be made by the SNBSC. And I believe the grant, Alex, if I'm correct, and Hollis, is just for the purpose of hiring an implementer, correct? That's what the money is devoted for, is to an implementer, either a contractor or employee, could be used in various ways, but it's for a person or an entity that would get the ball rolling by implementing this
Exactly.
customized plan.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm
Thank
happy
you.
with that. Thanks, Joyce.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so then we'll move on to new business, and here's the real exciting stuff, draft budget presentation. And our financial officer, Mark Porter, is with us, and he's going to go through the draft budget. Welcome, Mark, take your liberty.
Mark, before you get started, did you want me to run through the executive summary bit and then?
Yeah, that'd be good, Hollis.
Yeah, okay.
The executive summary, I believe, is in your package.
Yep, I've got an even lighter version of it.
Okay. Cole's notes version.
Cole's notes version, yeah, and then I'll let Mark answer all the numbers. So I'm just going to hit some of the highlights. So there's no significant changes that we anticipate with any insurance costs or anything for 2021. Salary ranges, we used 1.5% to account for cost of living. The board might change that when we get to that point here, but for budget purposes, we had to put something in there. COVID-19 has given us some challenges this year. So we anticipate the situation is probably going to continue into 2021, so we've budgeted accordingly. For recycling, we budgeted for the worst case scenario, which is sending the recycling materials to the Southeast Regional Service Commission. Right now, we're actually sending them to our previous processor in Quebec, but that's become cost prohibitive, mostly because of trucking. They have some restrictions on when they can receive because of staff, COVID restrictions and things like that. So it's meant that we can't do this in one day. It has to happen over two, so the trucking's gone up significantly. So the Southeast is a much better deal for us, but we're actively working towards, and I was hoping to have today a final number, and I didn't get it. Our other option is Woodstock, which should be less than Moncton. So our waste is down slightly in 2020, so we're cautious on our estimates for 2021, and we're assuming the trend is going to continue. ICI being the biggest culprit there. We are going into 21 with a abnormally large surplus, and that's because of a change that we made to the calculation of the closure fund. And we're going to have to withdraw some money from that closure fund, so the surplus is much larger than it would normally be. No significant change in any other normal expenses other than the normal increases. There is an increase in capital expenditures for 2021, main culprit being the landfill gas system. It's $450,000 on top of the other normal capital expenditures that we would be making. All of the capital is budgeted out of operations. We're not touching the capital reserve for 2021. Tipping fees, we budgeted to remain no change for any clients in 2021. So I just wanted to run through a couple of capital costs. So self-construction, that's something we do every year. Landfill gas system, I've got a couple of things to show you about that. Public drop-off, a backhoe. We need to replace the white goods truck, a couple of vehicles, and some building upgrades. So the landfill gas system, we currently have a non-operational flare, and we have some piping connected from the original wells that we drilled some years ago. We drilled additional larger bore wells last year. These aren't connected to anything, they're just drilled and sitting there, waiting to be connected. Currently, we're venting all of landfill gas into the atmosphere. And our strategic plan has an objective of dealing with the gas in a responsible manner and realizing some benefits from it. So currently what we have is this. We have pipes, we have wells in the ground, and we have some pipes connected. And we have a flare. We have a lot more wells that are just sitting not connected. The idea of this whole system is that once they are connected and we have the flare up and running, we can then go on to do a number of things. We can extract methane out of it and run vehicles on it. We could heat buildings with it. We could generate electricity with it, which is what most other landfills are doing, although it's not a moneymaker. And another option that we have is if we extracted methane pure, we could pipe it directly to the pipeline and sell it as methane. The pipeline is 5 kilometers from this facility. So that's a possibility. All of those things are kind of big dollar projects, and they are down the road, and I'd be looking for federal money to help with any of that. Just a little bit more.
Let's just say it's not a moneymaker, but is it balance? Like, is it break even?
It depends on which year budget you're looking at. In other RSCs, I've looked at their budgets on their power generation. They seem to either lose money or break even, believe it or not. Because We are only able to sell to NV Power at a predetermined rate by law. And you generally don't, by the time you do all of your rebuilds and your maintenance on the generators and pay for the capital cost of the generators, and go through all of that, you might break even from what I've seen. A lot of them are moving away from power generation to other alternatives of landfill gas. Right now, they still got their generators in operation, but a couple of them said when it comes time to rebuild these generators, they're not going to. They're going to do something else, which makes sense.
So my thoughts are though, if we break even, then is that doing the right thing also environmentally? So even sort of good.
It is, but we might as well just light it on fire because it's the same thing. It's
Okay.
The benefit is if we totally destroy all of the gas, we're cutting our greenhouse gases by like 90%. So you could generate power and go through all that, or you could just burn it at the flare. It kind of ends up being the same thing.
And you don't expend, because every time you construct something for the purpose of saving, you're also releasing carbon dioxide and all the other gases in the atmosphere in the construction portion of it, which can last years. So yeah, oftentimes I've heard that before and read reports that oftentimes just a simple flare is just as beneficial and far less costly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but we're burning it off. But at least if someone was burning it off and creating energy instead of using another energy source, that's better for the environment, I think, if I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
Lots of discussions yet to be had.
Yeah.
Certainly not. These are just all kind of,
Yeah.
can around, but they're definitely, all of that would have to be fleshed out. You're right, Alan. That would all have to be compared.
But our first plan is to lay down the foundation for doing something.
Yeah.
That's what this project is about.
So it's about connecting all the wells that are already there to some kind of collection system, even if nothing else, just to bring them to where the flare can be done. So is that what this part is for in this year's budget?
That is correct.
So it's about connecting all the wells into one system to go, for now, probably to the building where the flare is.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And hopefully maybe even start up the flare.
We used to, I know when I was on the board up till a couple of years ago, we would do a flare every now and again. It wasn't regular.
What was happening was, because we didn't have enough wells and the well bore wasn't big enough, there'd be pressure built up within the landfill, enough so there's enough gas to run the flare, and then as it ran, the pressure was released and there wasn't enough to sustain it.
Yeah.
To keep it going. So that was the issue. Now that we have all the new wells, that shouldn't be an issue at all.
Yeah.
Public drop off. So just to refresh everybody, so centralized area next to the recycling building where all streams of waste can be taken by the public to one area that's managed and supervised. Our current situation is we have about 7 different areas all over the site where people are taking various things. That could be scrap metal, that could be C&D, garbage,
Refrigerators.
hazardous waste, and it's all over the place. And we lose track of people. It's a security issue and a safety problem. So once this thing is operational, the only traffic we're going to allow in the cell are commercial garbage trucks. Everybody else goes to this one area, which is controlled. So the initial cost estimate was quite a bit more. We've done some work and we've dropped that by about half. By a lot of it is just by not paving a lot of it, but we changed some of the designs. We're able to do a lot of the work ourselves, so we cut the cost down to I think it's $250 in your package.
250,000.
Yeah.
What exactly is in that $250,000 price tag?
That would be the construction of the public drop-off site.
So are you talking building a building or just
No,
just the?
No building. There's some concrete work that has to be done, some concrete like barriers, things like that. Some earthworks, some drainage. There's a bunch of things like that have to happen. And then we have to put in the bins that all the stuff goes in. There's a hook lift that goes on the truck that we already have. It used to be a recycling truck. We're convert. So also in our capital plan, we've got some vehicles. The backhoe is due for replacement. Actually, it was due a couple of years ago. We kicked it down the road a couple of years. The white goods truck has got to be replaced. Funny story about that. I was helping move the planning office the other day. So I took that truck and I had the gas pedal right on the floor and going up the Tryon Hill, 70 kilometers an hour is as fast as that tire old truck will go. It's in 2006. We got 2 site vehicles on schedule for replacement. And the other thing was some building updates. So administration building, the one that I'm sitting in right now, we could pick away and do a couple of windows a year, or we could make a capital update plan and just do them all at once. Because I know as soon as we pop one of these windows out, it's not going to be the end. It's not just going to be a simple replacement. I know it's a can of worms we're going to open. So as soon as we do that, I know there's going to be probably some problems.
What do you mean? Do you think the walls are rotting?
Yeah. I'm sure the sills are rotted in a few spots. The flashing wasn't done well. There's just some issues. The windows weren't high grade to begin with, and they're now 23 years old. 23 years old. So it's time.
And what's the price tag on that?
I think we have 20,000 in the budget. And recycling building, the biggest thing we're doing to the recycling building is we're updating the sprinkler system there to a dry system, the purpose for which once it's dry, we no longer have to heat the building. In the wintertime, in February and January, that building is costing $8,000 to $10,000 a month to heat. So we don't really need to heat it because we're not doing much in there. And there's a couple of vehicles in there that actually have cabs and are heated anyway. So we can get away with not heating it or very, very minimal. So that's the reason for the going to a dry sprinkler.
And I know that the budget doesn't always show all the details. What's the cost for that?
About 30,000. Planning. So the planning division's budgeted revenue requirement for 21 is just slightly under what 2020 was. There are some changes in how we're doing some stuff, but it's actually nothing's costing us anymore. We are going into 21 with a healthy surplus for planning. We added, there's new items been added to the planning budget. So there's a capital reserve we're going to be putting $10,000 a year into, and that's for vehicle replacement. No significant change needed for revenue, but we have a wider tax base due to the addition of St. Stephen as a client. So the reduction in the required tax rate for 21 is going from 0.03497 per 100 assessment to 0.02996, or in other words, about half a cent. No other significant changes in planning operations are anticipated for 21. And cooperative and regional, largely unchanged. But even though the budget requirement is close to 2020, we had a large surplus going into 20 that we don't have in 21. So that has changed the revenue requirement. So the tax rate is going to go from 0.00318 to 0.004281. And that is my budget presentation.
All right, so that's the executive summary, I guess you call it, executive director summary. Okay, Mark, we'll turn it over to you. Unless anybody has a question for Hollis on his pre-budget presentation.
Yeah, I'll ask a question.
Alan?
How many people come in to do drop-off like daily?
At the beginning of COVID, it was a lot. It's usually between 10 and 20.
Per day, okay.
And it depends on who that, like there's private people that'll show up in cars and half tons. And then there are folks that'll come with a trailer because they cleaned out something. So we get quite a bit of that. This is also, the public drop-off is also going to include the C&D, so we get a lot of contractors that will show up with a trailer, half-ton trailer, they would go to the same area.
And then may I just ask how this would work? Because if, let's say a contractor brings a trailer or a half-ton full, or like I clean, I got my basement because I'm redoing it and I bring out a couple trailer loads. Does it all stay on that site, or does then the staff have to take that and move it somewhere else?
Well, the C&D site is actually directly behind where it is, so this is just kind of a reconfiguration of that.
Okay.
So yeah, it stays
And
there.
then the white goods, they get hauled out of here to somewhere else every so often, don't they?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we wouldn't be moving them around the site.
No, they just stay at that drop-off site until they go wherever they go.
Yep.
And the end result.
Yep.
And the household hazardous waste, same thing. So people bring their paint cans and their old chemicals,
Yep,
for pools and things like that.
so once we have that full enough, then we have, it's usually TerraPure or somebody that comes in and collects our hazardous waste.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Hollis? No. Okay, we're ready to turn it over to Mark. Mark?
All right,
Wakey,
thank you, Madam Chair. Hollis covered pretty well everything there, but I'm going to start on that 4-page budget summary.
Mhm.
Solid waste is at the top there, first page. So the big changes in here under the tipping fees for ICI, industrial, commercial, and institutional. The budgeted revenue, we dropped from a little over $1 million to just over a little bit over 800,000. And that's reflecting due to COVID or whatever other factors there might be, our revenues in that sector are down about 36%. So thought I would budget for worst case scenario. The waste from the schools, things like that will pick up again in the fall with schools open. So we may not see such a large decrease. Tipping fees from our other RSC to the Northwestern Valley, I dropped the revenue down there by about 50,000. And their revenue sources, from what I saw on their website, it's around half commercial and half residential. So we will probably see a drop there unless we start picking up a higher percentage of the revenue than, or I guess the waste tonnage than what we had before. Foreign revenues, they're staying strong, thankfully. So it's a good source of revenue for us. Construction and demolition is down at this point in time, so I did drop it down some. That may be due to delayed construction projects. And special waste, recycling, government transfers, there's not much in there for a change. Surplus of second previous year was 336,000. This current year, we're bringing in 2021, bringing in $1,345,000. And that is the surplus from the 2019 financial statements. Now that was high because of, I believe it was around 800,000. Maybe we adjusted the closure fund by. So at some point in time in 2021, probably early on, we're going to need that money to start doing capital expenditures. So we'll have to remove those funds out of the closure fund and transfer them into our general fund. In, I think sometime in September, we're going to have a meeting with our investment advisor, and he's going to tell us how to best do that. Next line down, investment income. I dropped that from 45,000 down to 20,000 because the returns on our investments are going to drop. Interest rates are down, and so are the dividends on the different corporations. And other revenues, that's gone up from 4,300 up to 19,000. And that has to do with solid waste charging local planning for the building on Wall Street that they're now occupying. So we now have total revenues, 4.3 million in 2020 for budgeted, going up to just a little over 5 million in 2021. Okay, next, in the expenses, I guess, the only things in there I'd say is we've got the budgeted wage increases for CPI. We hired one extra employee, one permanent employee, and the wage scale adjustments are all in there too. Under the station and building, we increased our cleaning costs, and that's something that's related to all departments. Then the cost everywhere went up. So it's got to do with COVID-19 cleaning, and also station and buildings, we increased the repairs to fix up our buildings as they get older. The wages were under landfill ops. That included the COLA and the pay scale changes. And we also have increased environmental monitoring costs from our engineering firm. Waste diversion, we have additional costs in there related to trucking and sorting of the recyclables. And as Hollis mentioned, we're hoping to get a better deal and save some money on that. And the capital expenditure budget, it was 900,000 the previous year. And now we're going to spend 1,380,000, and basically our adjustment to the closure fund from 2019 is paying for a lot of that. And we also will have, I estimate about 141,000 still to put back into the capital reserve. So that's rough. That's what I budgeted for a rough surplus. Next department is local planning. Now, in there, I changed the summary at the bottom of local planning a little bit from what was there the previous year. I just lost it here. Okay. So the tax base for planning services and the tax base for inspection is there. It was both exactly the same in 2020. This current year, because St. Stephen is the only one receiving planning services, their tax base goes into the calculation of the rate for planning services. So, yeah. Got a little typo error there. The next line down should be planning for property tax rate, and the other one should be inspection.
Are you under revenue, Mark, or under?
I'm actually down just below where the budgeted surplus deficit is.
Okay, you're in the highlights?
Yeah, down, yeah.
Just above the highlights.
Just above the highlights, yeah. It was a calculation of the rate so everybody could see how the rate actually changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the planning rate is going from basically 1.5 cents per $100 of assessment to 1.67 per 100 of assessment.
Mm-hmm.
So the planning costs are going up. The inspection rate is dropping. So it goes from 1.98 cents per $100 to 1.32 cents basically per $100.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, if you were receiving both services on a $100,000 house, you'd be paying $34.97 in 2020, be paying $29.96 in 2021.
So that
reduction.
That's the rate that each resident of this region per 100,000 of house is coming toward this budget here. Correct? To help people understand it. It's coming into the service commission budget.
That gets that service.
Yeah, that gets that service. Any resident that gets that service.
Right. That's why I separated the rate. So there's a planning rate, and just below it was the inspection rate.
Yeah.
It does say planning there again because I copied and pasted. I forgot to change it, I think.
So that second one down should be inspection.
It should be.
Yeah.
Where it has for the current year 0.013197.
Right.
And in planning, our surplus has gone up from the 2019 surplus was 25,799. So that is helping to keep the rate down as well. For costs, I guess in there, the administrative costs, we increased those in the budget to increase the legal service budget, and the cleaning costs related to COVID-19. Cleaning costs have basically doubled. Under planning, comparing the two budgets, we hired a new planner in 2020. And so in 2021's budget here, we've got a planner for a full year, whereas in the 2020 budget, we didn't have that planner in there. And for inspection services, we've reduced our inspectors down from 3 to 2 as of January 2020. So the new budget for 2021 only includes 2 building inspectors. And that includes the enforcement costs by one of the inspectors. And physical services, that's the 10,000 that Hollis was talking about, so that when it's time to replace the vehicles for local planning, that we'll have the money there to pay for it. It doesn't make any sense to go to the capital borrowing board and issue debentures to purchase vehicles. They have a limited life, and it's a lot of work to apply to the borrowing board. So we thought it'd be easier just to start setting a little money aside each year, and that way we won't have the problem later on that we're going to have to double up on our costs. So I guess overall, the cost of the service is constant. It's $650,000 basically in both budgets.
Are there any questions for Mark about the local planning portion of this?
Cooperative and regional planning. In that one, so what has changed there is the surplus in 2020 was $25,372 that we had in the budget. Now it's down to $5,752. And the $5,752 would have been the surplus from 2019's actual financial statements. And as far as other revenues go, besides what we receive from our members, we still get the 75% wage subsidy from the province to a maximum of $41,250. Our costs are still the same. Basically, the allocation from corporate services is down a little bit. The regional planning part of it, that's basically part of Alex's salary, is the main part in there for him doing regional planning type work. Regional policing collaboration, the biggest thing in there would be the speed sign for our annual software license and the maintenance on it. A little bit for EMO for $700, and the regional sport, recreation, and culture expenses, $77,000. That's for the regional recreation plan, and that's mainly salaries in there. So overall, the cost is up about $5,000, and that's because there's a deficit instead of a surplus coming in. So overall, for cooperative and regional planning, the tax rate per $100,000 of property assessment is going to be $4.28, and it was $3.18 the year before. And the main cause of that is because we had a surplus in 2020's budget. And we don't have the same scenario in this 2021 budget. And I'd say next page would be corporate services. Those are our administrative services. So overall, the total cost is $420,000 for a budget in 2020. It's $434,000 in 2021. And those costs are allocated to our 3 different departments. So solid waste is getting $334,000 out of the budget. The costs for local planning is going to be $59,000 and about $41,000 for cooperative and regional. And those are estimates that we do to say, the administrative salaries for myself, Claudette, and Hollis, how we allocate those salaries, plus any administrative expenses related to all the, or basically it's related to the building out in Lawrence Station. So a portion of those costs are allocated to each department. So our overall budget is going to total be $5,845,765, and budgeted expenditures of the same for a 0 surplus. And our budget for capital expenditures is $1,380,000. And I believe that I think you probably all have the 10-year capital plan. I'm not sure.
Nope, I don't.
I didn't include it in the package, Mark, but I can send it over.
Okay. Yeah. That 10-year capital plan is just identifying what we plan on buying for capital assets over the next 10 years and how they will be funded. So basically we've budgeted enough that we're going to be paying for pretty well everything out of operations each year. Except for possibly the year when we buy a new compactor. But because it's such a large expenditure, we maybe can't afford all of it, but we have lots of money in our capital reserve fund to pay for that as well. So shouldn't be any negative effect on the commission. And that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions for Mark? Anything at all? Now's your chance. No questions? I guess you've done a good job, Wallace and Mark, presenting it. And of course, if something comes to your mind after that you need to ask a question about, certainly do reach out. There's nothing saying you can't reach out after if something pops into your mind or something jumps out at you on the paperwork. So with that presentation being done, we'll move on to the next item of new business, and that's a discussion on having the possibility of having an annual general meeting for this service commission. As you all will have remembered, traditionally, per our bylaws, we have it in April. However, if there's a year when there's municipal elections held, we don't have it in April. We still have it in April, but we don't elect officers until June. So that part of the AGM would have been delayed until June. And we are, of course, able to travel and meet as long as we can keep our distance. And if we have one in September, it'll be another 7 months until April, if my math is serving me correctly, when we have the next AGM. But again, at the next AGM, hopefully there'll be municipal elections next spring, since we're having a provincial election this, in September. So hopefully we'll be able to have municipal elections and have that done and know who we're going to have at the table and do election of officers again in June. So we're looking at a time frame of, if we have it in September, we could be having another one in April, and then election of officers again next June if all goes well. So it was my suggestion when we met with the executive committee that we discuss the possibility of having an AGM, and because of the fact that we are mandated to do election of officers, the executive officers, that would be the chair, the vice chair, and the executive member at large, and that is by secret ballot. We did think that having it in person for as many who could and wanted to would be good. There are spaces we could rent. And technology like speakers and all that can help us, microphones and speakers. So I'm certainly willing, and the executive committee thought it was worth discussing with the board to see what your preference is. Would you like to have that AGM that we postponed in April? And the motion was to postpone it until such time as we could have it again. We didn't put a time frame on it. So it's certainly at the discretion of the board. We're not trying to force anything, but the three of us thought it was worth discussing. Any comments, any feedback? Yes, no, should we, shouldn't we? If we did, we were thinking, same as always, we'd have the board meeting in the regular board meeting, the September board meeting, and then following that would be our AGM. So our typical two meetings crammed tonight. Terry, did you start to say something?
Yeah, I was going to put forward a motion if it's called for, that we hold our AGM in September at our September meeting.
Following the September board meeting, because it has to be a separate meeting.
The AGM? No, I mean, like for September, whatever the date is. I don't have a calendar in front of me.
September the 24th?
Yeah.
The fourth Thursday, let me look at my calendar. September 24th would be the fourth Thursday. So we would be having our regular board meeting. We'd be having our regular board meeting on September 24th anyway. And then we'd adjourn that. When that adjourned, we'd do a break like always, and then go into our AGM. But it's certainly it's up for discussion, and we certainly want to, yeah, Terry?
Well, I was just going to say there's a motion on the table. I need a seconder.
So you made the motion to have it following our September board meeting, regular board meeting? So there's a motion on the table. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Annette says she'll second it. Okay, so we have a motion. It's been seconded. Now we can discuss. Anybody have any comments, opinions? Yes, no, concerns?
You seem good with it.
Yes, I do.
Wait, sorry.
Wayne Sturgeon.
Hi, Wayne. Did you
Hi.
have something you wanted to address about the motion on the floor?
Yeah,
Nope.
how long would this take? We did one meeting right after the other.
Generally, in the past, we made the motion to start our regular board meeting earlier, so around 5. We make sure our regular board meeting agenda is as short as it can be. We waste no time, we put no extra stuff in there. And then we have a quick turnaround time of a half an hour, usually to have a quick bite to eat, because most of us skip supper to come, and then we go into our AGM. We're generally still out by about 8:30 p.m.
Well, my only thing is that for us people, if you work wait till 5, and then you haven't had supper or anything like that, I'd be concerned about the length of time personally.
Yeah, it is a challenge, and there's many of us who've had to skip one or the other for sure. But we don't have to have it on the same night, but that was the motion on the table, so that's what the vote will be on. But certainly, I take your point very well, because it has created challenges for Alan. You have something?
Yeah, my question or concern, I guess, is if we elect a new chair, and is the transition going to work out okay where we're still doing all this COVID Zoom stuff? Like can a chair get in there and learn the ropes?
Oh, I would think.
That's something absolutely that people can think about when they make their decision before we vote on whether or not to have an AGM, for sure. Thank you for the input. Any other questions or concerns? And if anybody wants to speak to Alan's point or Wayne, certainly feel free. Any other questions or discussion?
Well, I think the feeling of everybody right now in the whole province is that probably an election shouldn't have been called when it is. And I pretty well feel about the same thing as this, is going for an AGM, and then turn around 7 months later and then have another AGM. I just assume
wait.
I just assume wait, and then your board's going to change. Maybe not a whole lot, but you don't know from time to time.
Right. Point
And
taken.
then you don't have to go through all this here, all the orientation and everything else.
Yep. All right. So Dennis has any other input, or are we ready for the question? Calling once, calling twice. No other discussion. We'll call the vote. The motion was to hold an AGM that would have normally been held in April, to hold that AGM after September 24th board meeting. That was the motion, so we'll call. Anybody in favor can put your hand up on the screen. If you're in favor of having the AGM, and then we'll go to the phone. We'll go to the boardroom and then we'll go to the phones. Anybody in favor can raise your hand. None? Anybody in the boardroom? Anybody on the phones?
Jim says yes.
Jim,
I'm in.
sorry, Jim, I missed your hand. So Jim says yes. Okay, so there's a hand up in the boardroom. Then we'll go to the phones. I'll do them in order that they appear on the screen. So we'll go to Wayne.
No.
Wayne
No.
who?
Wayne McQuarrie, sorry. Wayne McQuarrie.
No.
He's on the phone. Okay, thanks, Wayne McQuarrie. I appreciate that. Terry?
Yes.
Yes. Faith?
No.
Faith, pardon me, I didn't catch that, sorry.
No.
No? Okay. Now for anybody on the screens, if you did not raise your hand for aye, if you are not in favor, you also have the ability to raise your hand to say that you're against the motion, express your vote that way. So you can raise your hand if you want and Claudette can count if you're against the motion. Any that did raise their hand for either will be an abstention. Pardon me?
Point of order. Is the original motion still being voted on? Or have you changed the motion?
No, the motion has not changed.
Okay, so the motion that's on the table is that we hold an AGM. What was the vote?
We haven't finished it yet because I haven't called for the nays. It's a little bit different because I have to ask the phone people. They can't raise their hand. So they can say a nay before the people on the screen, because usually we call for all in favor.
When you voted, they said nay, so I don't know why they got to do it again. I heard Wayne McQuarrie say no, and I heard Faith Avery say no.
Yes, because they're on the phone, Terry. They're on the phone.
Right.
Heather had?
So they couldn't just be silent. They had to express in words what we couldn't see by a raised hand. So now I have to go back and say for anybody. Sorry, you're cutting out a little bit, Terry. I'm sorry.
Not a good thing, but I'm just saying that the vote, you've already called for the vote for the AGM. Am I right? Or did I miss something?
No, this is what we're voting on right now.
Right. Well, what did you just ask me when I said yes on the phone? And Faith and Wayne said no.
That I asked you to vote on the motion to hold the AGM after September's board meeting.
Right. So and then so why are you counting for no votes now?
Because because Terry.
Hold on.
When
This is
the
my role
people-
here. You keep going, Joyce, please. Just get your nays from the people that are in the video.
Hey, the people who are on video that did not raise your hand.
You can't dismiss me like that, Alan. I have a right to know what's going on just because I can't be there. I'm asking for clarification. The chair
You're
should
there.
be able to give it to me.
Terry,
And they
this
gave
is
it
what
to you.
happened. Alan, I'll answer. Terry, this is what happened. The motion was to hold the AGM after the September regular board meeting. I said, everybody in favor can raise your hand and then we'll go to the phone. So we were taking a visual of the people on the screens and in the boardroom.
Right.
Okay. That was just everybody. That was it, in favor. That was the only option they had to express themselves if they're on video or in this room.
Okay, because if that was the question, then when you asked in favor, Wayne responded no, Faith responded no. So are you asking for the negatives now?
I'm going to have to for the people in this room and the people on the screen who didn't verbally express a no, but they also didn't raise their hand for a yes.
All right.
Okay? Because the question for the people who could raise their hand and be seen to be counted was all in favor, raise your hand. So if they didn't raise their hand, they now have to be.
My God, if you have to keep going over it. I got it.
Thank you. All right, so for those of you who can raise your hand to be counted, whether you're on the screen or in this room, would you please at this time, if you are not in favor of holding the AGM, raise your hand. Let's leave them up till Claudette can count. And in this room, we have Winston and Annette in the room in case Claudette can't see, that have their hand, and Dennis with their hands raised, that they are not in favor. Wayne McQuarrie, Wayne Sturgeon, Alan, Carla, and Ken all have their hand raised at this time as well, as being, and Dick as being not in favor. And Sam, I see a hand there too. So it looks like the nays have it on this one. We will not be having an AGM. Thank you all for the robust discussion and participation and expressing yourselves freely. That's what it's all about. And we certainly just did want to present the option to you, and you've spoken, and we will honor that. So thank you all so very much. So we'll move on to committee and staff reports at this time. The executive director's report. Hollis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so you have the report in your package. Solid waste is down a little bit year over year, 2020 versus 2019. Planning is busy. Year to date, 86 building permits plus 80 St. Stephen permits. The reason I have those split is because we don't do the building inspections on St. Stephen. Historically, last year, this time we had 110 total, and 2018, 91 total. In development, year to date is 136. Last year was 85. Year previous was 49. A lot of that's attributable to enforcement. So big news is we moved our planning office. I didn't take this picture, but
No, you're in it.
I'm in it, yeah. So we were successfully moved into our new premise. It's not complete yet, but everybody's working out of it and very appreciative of the new space and the ability to, make advantage of much better premises than what we had. I also promised last time we met, I was going to give you a little bit of visual about where we were landfill wise. So this is a drone shot that I took not very long ago. So you can see our first row is complete. The area that is here is what we're concentrating on getting a final cap on right now. And our new cell is over on the other side. This long pond you see, and I'm sorry for those of you on the phone, but this long pond that you see right here was the one that we had all the trouble with. That leaked. It has now been repaired and in its functioning. That is some of the new aeration that we have put in. A little hard to tell what the scale is, but if you see that little house over there, it's the size of a regular bungalow. Another aerial shot. Towards the end here, you'll see the new filter, and this is kind of the final piece we're working on right now. The liner has now been installed. We are preparing it for winter, and it may or may not be in operation before winter, but if it isn't, not the end of the world.
And that's what down there? That's
the final filter.
the filter, okay.
Yeah. So we've got our new 50,000 cubic meter pond, which feeds our 25,000 cubic meter pond, which is where all that new aeration is, you see. The ponds after that is additional treatment aeration. After that, those are ponds, even though they look all green because they're full of wood chips and plants for filtration, and then on and on until we get to the end. Just another shot. In the background is the big new one. And finally, that's a shot outside of this administration building, 100 meters up in the air, looking towards the site. So you can see the whole landfill and the new pond on the right, and then all ponds at those feet, and then going down, here's our road and our recycling building. And yeah.
And so, can you go back to that picture, Hollis?
Sure.
So if almost in the center of the screen, so you see the road going up the left, and then there's, I take it that's the cells kind of in the center there, and then there's another little road coming back toward us. What's down there?
So that, if you're driving down this road, over here is our white goods and scrap metal over here. This is what I was talking about, stuff all over the site. This is C&D over here.
Okay.
This is where we stockpile some gravel. These blue things are the old recycling bins, which should be gone, by the way. We were successful. I gotta go down and check if they picked them up, but we sold a bunch of that stuff to Fundy Regional Service Commission.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We didn't get
So
a lot.
those are the old blue community bins that used to be out around
Correct.
in parking lots. Okay.
Correct.
So if the drop-off site for the public goes ahead, that will be back out this road and down this way, correct?
Right there,
Right there.
beside this recycling building.
Okay, gotcha.
So they don't have to drive all the way through all.
Right.
Doesn't
Oh.
look like
No, doesn't.
doesn't look
Oh,
like
that's-
garbage.
Yep. Yep.
I just want to comment. I really appreciate these pictures. Really appreciate it. Really good visual. Thank you.
Oh, no
It
problem.
is good to see it from that perspective, isn't it? I think most of us have taken the tour, but to see
Oh.
it like,
It really
Yeah.
is. Much
and
appreciated.
doesn't it look clean? I mean, it's a landfill, but
Yeah, it doesn't look like
you when you hear landfill, you wouldn't expect an aerial view to look
Yeah.
like
You
that.
picture a big pile of garbage, but it isn't.
Yeah, yeah.
It has to be well controlled. I mean, that's the whole purpose of what we do. So.
That would make a good PR picture.
Well, I'm sort of planning on putting together something for the website, which is like because I've got video as well.
Mhm.
So like a video of
Awesome.
kind of a tour. Because I think a lot of people, when I take them on tours here and they show up, they have no idea
Mhm.
what it is we do or how big it is, and it's always wow, I had no idea this stuff was back here, and I can't believe how much goes into this, and so I think it'd be, not a bad thing to take credit for, because I got to say, like, when you look at it like this, everything is lined up perfectly.
Mhm.
It's not, there's nothing haphazard here. It's all well planned, well laid out, and that's just from 20 odd years of good work behind it.
I find it looks even better to look at the aerial view than being there, because it's so big and overwhelming when you're going through it. Like, you get to
Yeah.
visualize the whole thing.
And
very
when you
nice.
look, and when you look at it from the air, you don't get the smell that's back there. So there's
That's a bonus.
that. Oh, dear.
Yeah.
So that, okay, is that it for your executive director's report, Hollis?
Yep. I don't know if I.
Is there anything else? And then you have the strategic plan, but that's a separate line item in the
That's right.
agenda. Is there any question? Are there any questions for Hollis about what he's just presented to us? Nothing? Okay, then we'll move on to the strategic plan update, and that again is going to be Hollis's presentation.
Okay, so again, that's included in your package. A couple of things I want to highlight that have happened. The housing strategy research is now available online. I sent that out to the board along with the website that's created. The new St. Stephen office, obviously we moved into that, so that was a piece in there as well. So we talked in our strategic plan about adopting technology, and now we've had several board meetings and community meetings, and we've had just last night a public hearing of objections that had 74 attendees, and it went smoothly and successfully. Well, it went smoothly. I can't speak to the success. When we've done the renovations to the planning office, part of our strategic plan is to reduce CO2 footprint. So what we've done there is windows that were replaced with energy efficient ones because they were pretty poor. The lighting has been replaced with LED lighting. We added insulation. It's heated with a heat pump. It should be quite an efficient building now. And we've done the windows that I'm talking about replacing at this administration building. We've done some LED lighting upgrades, and the windows will increase efficiencies. So every time we do that kind of stuff, that's what we look at. We're talking about buying site vehicles for next year. those site vehicles are probably not going to be the same 6.4 liter engines. We'll see if we can do better than that. So about, we had a piece in there about local nonprofits and social enterprise being strengthened. As a result of that, one of the KPIs, our new cost sharing plan, which strengthens all of those folks in recreation. So that's currently being proposed and worked on, and that is seeing some movement. We're going to see more of that upcoming. That's what I have for this month's updates on our strategic plan.
Are there any questions for Hollis about the strategic plan update? Any questions at all? All right, thank you, Hollis. Great, we'll move on to the next, which is the HR committee report, Human Resources Committee report, and Wade is the chair of that committee. Wade, are you with us?
Yep, with you. So anyways, I can read it, or I can just basically assume that everybody's had a chance to read it, the highlights of the meeting. Can you hear me all right? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you, Wade.
Okay, good. Anyway, so we met with the ADM and the manager of VLG to discuss governance, and the highlights of that are in there. And the HR committee met again to make sure we had alignment on what the results of that was, because all the members of the committee could not attend. That is recorded, so if anybody wants to hear the specific details of it, they can probably get a copy of that from the ED. And we're still working on trying to revise the HR manual to clean up stuff that wasn't finished in the past and to add a few new little things to it. So, any questions?
No questions? All right, thank you, Wade. We'll move on to the Regional Collaborative Oversight Committee report. And Terry James is the chair of that committee. Terry, are you still with us? I know she wasn't always sure if she could stay the whole time. Terry?
Doesn't look like she's there. I can read if you like, Madam Chair, or you can.
Is there anybody here else from the RCO either? Okay, go ahead. We'll let, since Terry obviously has dropped off, and that not necessarily unexpected because of her having to zoom in tonight or phone in, I'll let Hollis will present or read the report. He can't present it on behalf of the committee, but he can certainly read the report that was out of that committee.
Okay, so we met on, the committee met on July 23rd. Had an update from the waste reduction coordinator. We have a new contract with the Atlantic Dairy Council. So previous years, we only ever got $2,500 for the plastic milk jugs. But this one is now going to be $260 a ton or $50 a load, which is going to work out to much more money from Atlantic Dairy for recycling milk containers.
Can you just expand on that, Hollis? Does that mean for every ton of recycling that we ship out of here, the Atlanta Dairy Council is going to pay us $260 a ton or $50 a load?
Yeah, I don't think that number is right, actually. Now that I look at that, there's no way to be paid just $260. I think that's $260. But yeah, I'd have to verify that number.
Yeah, I'm thinking, yeah.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah.
That can't be right.
It'd be nice, but
Very nice.
Would it be $26 a ton or $50 a load? Like,
$50 a load is probably right. I'll make sure that we get a correct figure on that.
but so they don't do anything with the milk jugs or milk cartons. It's just the fact that we get them as part of our recycling that we collect, and we're shipping it to be reduced and reused or whatever, that they're paying us
That's
because
right.
we have a program in place to collect those things.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're not separating them out or anything like that.
Nope, we're not separating. This is similar to the pop-off. So we get funded pop-offs and
Yeah.
recycling all the time.
Yeah.
But because we ship them out of province, so nobody else gets to cash them in for refunds, they pay us.
Okay.
They do an audit every so often to find out how many pop-offs we had in a ton, and then they give us.
So how many loads, just so we can do the math, how many loads did we send out last year?
of recycling,
Mm-hmm. Approximately.
100 and,
More than 250?
no, there's 20 loads,
Okay.
I want to say.
Hollis, we do about 6 or 7 per month.
6 or 7 per month. So if we even went on the short side, 6 per month, that's 72 loads at $50 a load. We're going to well exceed what they used to give us annually.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Received an ETF letter offer $45,000, and that's for a variety of things like the white goods truck. There's the signage on that is old, so there was money to replace that. I know we're replacing the truck, so we have a replaceable sign system, so we can actually take the sign off the truck, put on a new one.
Mm-hmm.
The bags that everybody seems to love, and new calendar for 2021.
We're getting the fridge magnets for the recycling schedule too.
Probably.
I depend on mine.
Okay.
It's on my fridge and I check it every week.
I know, me too.
So I hope we get something to stick on our fridge. Just if I can put that little plug in there. I do love the fridge ones to help us keep
Yeah,
track.
everybody really likes those. So yeah.
Yeah, well, it's just so handy, right? Because otherwise the calendar, I don't keep a calendar out in the common area, so I gotta go in the office and look at the calendar. It's just nice to have one on my fridge. Just if I can put an ask in there. A plug of support for the fridge magnets. Okay.
So Tanya gave her recreation update from the surf committee, and there was discussion about cost sharing, which resulted in the cost sharing meeting we had last month. And her update on coastal trail were there. Municipal expenses, Terry was asking about that I would give an update here about the insurance, which is what I gave earlier.
All right.
And the committee of the whole meeting, which we had.
And yes, we did have the committee of the whole meeting, so that came out of that. Are there any questions for Hollis? And you can also ask a member of the committee that was there at the meeting if you have any questions either, and they can bring clarity if you need any. Any questions about that report?
I have one there.
Yeah, Winston?
Is this different, this receiving official ETF letter offering 45,000, is that different from the other?
Yes.
It is.
Completely different.
So we need a motion tonight to accept the 45,000 from the other?
That'll come out of the PrAC, I think, out of the PrAC report.
Yeah, there's a motion from not PrAC, PMC.
PMC.
PMC, okay, as long as it's there.
Yes, Winston's just clarifying that this $45,000 in this report is separate from the $45,000 that Alex talked about when he gave his presentation. This is specific to I believe, to the recycling promotional material.
That's correct.
In the recycling program.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Winston, for clarifying that, because I did have that same question
So I can see why.
previously. Because
Same
same
amount.
amounts.
That's just
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions about the RCO report? None? Okay, so we'll move on to the bylaw committee report, and Jim is the chair of that. So Jim?
The bylaw committee met on August the 10th. All the members were present. We went further into some language in the bylaws that we thought was a little problematic and tried to clean it up, make it a little more finite. We made several updates. We are planning another meeting on September the 1st, and the committee hopes to wrap up its work by either September or October. We're close. We're getting close to the end.
Getting closer. And for clarity too, Jim, do you mind if I speak and just say, like, one of the things we're like, why is that in there? Why does it have to be that way? And so sometimes we're finding ways where we can say per regulation, whatever, just to clarify where some of the items come from. So that if you're ever reading through them and shake your head or scratch your head, you know it wasn't just something somebody decided to stick in there. So it's interesting work, and there's a lot to it for sure. Thank you, Jim. Any questions for Jim about the work that the bylaw committee is doing? Any questions at all? None? All right, we'll move on to PMC, Planning Management Committee report. And Mr. Dennis is the chair of that one. So Dennis,
Yep, we had a meeting August the 17th. Started out, Hollis and Alex went through the lines of the proposed 2021 local planning budget. Explained the overall cost of the service was decreasing to members back to some of the lowest rates the commission has historically achieved. This was due to the St. Stephen Planning 2021 service fees now being calculated into the regional revenue as well as staffing changes. Alex and Heather gave a presentation on the regional housing strategy and regional housing research, an executive summary of the research, an infographic, and a brief housing plan for the board to consider adopting. Were given by the PMC members to review. Members were in agreement that this would be best to be presented to the board at the September meeting. Alex discussed the regional climate adaptation plan and provided an infographic and brief climate adaptation plan that the board can consider adopting. SNBSC has a matter of days to decide if it wishes to utilize the $45,000 of ETF funds to start the implementation of this plan. This money would have to be sent in a limited window between the time the commission hires a contractor and March the 31st, 2021. The contractor would be needed to get this plan started in a number of long-term roles, hosting regional climate adaptation collaborative would later fall to the commission staff. The PMC was in agreement that the board should utilize the EFT funds and allow the commission to hire a contractor to begin implementation of the plan. PMC also agreed that this contract position would not have to go out to a lengthy tender process, but the expressions of interest could be sought. The PMC also discussed whether it was better to seek a contractor other than the ECW to carry out this work. Dennis Blair raised the idea that with the PMC about using the basement of the new planning office as a second commission boardroom. Hollis explained that it would be a significant cost given to the main floor supporting system. Also, the basement provided space to grow if the commission takes on more services. Alan and Doug explained that the commission could make use of the municipal meetings rooms for RC board meetings. Alan asked a question about the Bayside public hearing, and Alex discussed the process and explained why RSC staff are required to chair these meetings. Recommendations to the board: to adopt the Southwestern Brunswick Service Commission Climate Adaptation Plan version 1.0 as presented, and to secure an implementator for using the ETF funding until March 31st, 2021.
all right. Thank you, Dennis. Any questions for Dennis about that report?
Is that a motion, Dennis?
Those last two recommendations should be formed as motions if you want to do it that way. It's up to you.
Yeah, well, I thought it should be. I didn't have time to go over this before when I told Alex it looked good, so I will make a motion.
Two separate motions. If you want.
Yeah, I will make a motion that we adopt the Southwestern Brunswick Service Commission Climate Adaptation Plan version 1.0 as presented.
As presented by Alex. We really should have that in front of us to know what we're adopting would have been.
Alex, have you got that little plan there?
Senator, would you like me to put the plan up on the screen for everybody?
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea.
So we have a motion to adopt the Southwestern Brunswick Service Commission Climate Adaptation Plan version 1.0 as presented by Alex at this board meeting.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Annette. Okay, Alex is going to put it up on the screen and then we'll take questions and discussion.
Let me know if you'd like me to stop at any point. I'm just going to put it here.
Maybe you could just run through that a little bit there, Alex.
Okay, so again, just quickly, this is the
Alice, can you print me a copy of that? Can you print me a copy?
version. There's a objective. The objective, advancing best practice for climate change adaptation. Application and scope, how it fits within your strategic plan, and who would be responsible for the work and seeing it. The strategic policies that the board could expanding its mandate to cover this. Policy 1, the Service Commission serves as the region's climate change adaptation facilitator for the actions contained in Appendix A. Policy 2, that pursuant to the aforementioned policy, a short-term contractor be hired with the environmental trust fund money to initiate the objectives contained in Appendix A. And then policy 3, that the commission shall regard for the recommendations contained within the southwestern New Brunswick Regional Climate Adaptation Plan that ECW produced in 2019, and any future regional plan regulation adopted by the Service Commission. So we don't have that yet, but if you did, it would be important to have regard for the work that has been done.
So Alex, just to pause on policy 1.3, the Southwestern Brunswick Regional Climate Change Adaptation Plan is this document here that you're talking about? That the SNBSC shall have regard for the recommendations contained within this document?
No, this is the naming is a little bit confusing, perhaps. This is this document I'm referring to here is the document ECW produced. So the one with all the research and all their specific scientific calculations about sea level rise or wet area mapping, that lengthy document with all the maps and so on and data. If the commission were to develop a regional plan regulation, the Service Commission can't do that yet, but if it was required to by the province, then it would make sense to have regard for the work that's already been done. It doesn't bind you to follow it, it's just to tie in the work that's already been done. So we're not having to reinvent the wheel when the time comes to do a regional plan and have to discuss how to deal with climate.
Okay, so then if we go back to policy 1.1-2, the contractor be hired to initiate the objectives contained in Appendix A. So this, if we go on to the next motion to use the ETF funding, then Appendix A will be what this person is doing. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay.
And for people on the phone, maybe I could reread Appendix A.
Sure.
So the first action would be establish a regional climate change collaborative with EMO, member municipalities, and the regional offices of the government in New Brunswick, such as DTI. B, ensure climate change adaptation knowledge is in the hand of all decision makers on infrastructure in the region. So public works offices in municipalities or DTI. B, ensure climate change adaptation knowledge is in the hand of the public. B, work with the Passamaquoddy Nation on mapping cultural sites at risk of loss due to climate change. E, communicate the importance of climate change planning to all audiences. And lastly, F, work with municipalities and local service districts to assist with critical climate adaptation projects.
So that's what that person would be doing. And when you say, when the document says, I don't mean to say you, when the document says ensure climate change adaptation knowledge is in, does that mean that that document is prepared by ECW, or does that just mean like what? Is that the type of knowledge they're going for, or just to start a discussion? And I guess what is that what you mean by ensure that that climate change adaptation knowledge is in their hands is basically that document prepared by ECW? Is that?
No, it's I think we're just talking generally here. So the general, and a good example of this would be It could be stuff that is contained in that documents, but it could also be things like guideline we created for contractors for building more climate resilient homes. So things that are less burn in a forest fire, for example.
Right.
So that kind of just practical wisdom type of things that people can do that is useful to the general public.
Perfect, thank you. And the other question I have personally is with the provincial election being called, it's being held September the 14th, and then depending on how it goes, we don't know if there'll be a delay in actually getting a legislature to split. Is this provincial election going to interfere in the ability of someone that's hired to be able to do this? Is that delay and no sitting government going to hinder this significantly?
If I was to estimate, I would not think so, because the first action, the regional change collaborative, we're talking about getting people around the table who are staff, people who are primarily, it could involve some elected officials, municipally or locally with local service districts, but we're not talking about necessarily MLAs. It might form into that, but that's part of the nature of this thing. This is just basically a group that continue the discussion among people who have a kind of a stakeholder role in this. So MLAs could be involved, but it's not necessarily. So I think
it's not hinging on that. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I was just curious. Thank you. Any other questions for Alex? We have the motion, we have the seconder. Alex has gone through the document. This is our discussion and question time. Just to recap where we are. Any other questions or discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Ken.
Are any of the other RSCs taking advantage of this, and how many?
I'm Chair, I could.
Yes, go ahead, Alex.
I do know of at least 3, perhaps 4 that are doing it. The ones which I know is Southeast Regional Service Commission, the Northwest Regional Service Commission, and Chaleur Regional Service Commission. I believe the Canadian Peninsula is a little bit behind, but the Northwest and Southeast are a little bit ahead of us.
Ahead of, as in some of them are behind, they haven't quite yet got a finished report, and others have got the report and are already working on the implementation. Is that what you mean by ahead of us and behind us?
Yeah, so meaning that they might have a staff person who who's already started some of the work on adaptation, or they've done adaptation planning already and it's well integrated in their plans already. Whereas we're fairly advanced in this compared to the rest of the regional service commissions, but some are even further ahead than we are.
Awesome. Did that answer your question, Ken?
It does. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Alex. Any other questions for Alex? Or about the motion on the table? No questions? All right, so we've had a motion. We've had it seconded. We've had some discussion. We'll move on to the question. So Hollis, if you could put the people back on the screen for me. Perfect, and we'll do it. What we'll do maybe this time is I'll separate the group. Maybe I'll just, if you all don't mind, I'll just ask you individually according to how I see you on the screen and then in the room, whether you vote yay or nay, and Claudette can report them, and that way we don't, all in favor say aye and then go through that again. So let's just ask you each how you vote, if you don't mind, making that allowance for us this time. And we'll start with Carla in the top left corner. We'll do everybody on the screen, then we'll do everybody in this room, and then we'll do everybody on the phones, if that's okay. So we'll start on who I see on the screen. Carla, how do you vote on the motion? She's muted. Yeah. Hit your space bar if you're on a computer. There, hey, hold it down and talk. Hold it down and talk. There you
Okay,
go.
There you go.
I'll say yes.
Carla. Then we'll go to Ken.
Yes.
Yes. Wade.
Yes.
Yes. Alan. Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you, Alan. Then we'll go on to Sam.
Yes.
Yes. Heather.
Yes.
And then we'll go on to Dick. Are you gonna, Dick, you want to express your vote? Yeah, you're unmuted. How do you vote, Dick? Okay, we'll move on and come back. So we'll go to the room, the boardroom. Dennis, how do you vote?
Yes.
Annette?
Yes. Yes.
Jim is yes.
Yes.
Winston is yes. Then we'll go to phones. We'll go to Wayne Sturgeon. Wayne Sturgeon? No. Wayne McQuarrie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. And we have two that we weren't able to get audio from, Dick and Wayne Sturgeon. So we'll just have that noted, please. Thank you. Okay, so everybody has had a chance to vote on that motion and it has been carried. So it looks like your personalized SNBSC climate adaptation plan version 1.0 has been adopted by this board. You have your motion. Thank you. So Dennis, then we'll move on to the second recommendation to the board, was to secure an implementer using the available ETF funding the ETF funding that is available until March 31st, 2020. So that was the recommendation.
I'll make the motion.
You'll make the
Secure
motion?
an Implementer using EFP funding until March 31st, 2021.
We have another motion on the table from Dennis to secure an implementer using the available ETF funding until March 31st, 2021. Do we have a seconder? Jim has, okay, yes, fighting over that one. Jim has seconded it as well. Questions about what this entails? Any questions or comments on the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, we have Alan.
So I just, a question to Alex. I just want to make sure that asking what we're going to benefit from this, because even though it's free, doesn't mean it's going to be work for our staff. Is it something that we are going to benefit, I guess, not just take it because it's there?
Madam Chair, for me,
Yes, go ahead, Alex.
I do believe there's going to be a significant benefit. This is that there's piles of data and a lot of really just very practical things that could be.
Alex, your audio is cutting out. Alex, your audio.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
So yeah, I was just going to say there's piles of data that was generated that we have access to that could be distributed and shared, and there's some critical infrastructure that when it comes time to update, it would be really worthwhile to have this in the hands of people who are making decisions about that. So some people are a little bit ahead of others. Some municipalities already know this stuff and are working well within their plans, and others need a little bit of assistance. Some of the smaller municipalities may have never done this kind of work. So this would be support for some of the smaller municipalities, and LSDs have no one else to help them do this work. So this is just to LSD where there's critical infrastructure. So I do believe there is going to be significant value.
Does that answer your question, Alan?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate your time. So if I'm understanding this correctly, because I'm wrapping my head around it too, Alex. So if there's a piece of infrastructure in an LSD, let's say it could be a bridge or something that this plan has identified it at risk, then this implementer that can be part of who they go to have this say, hey, have you considered this? Is that kind of one of the things that can happen as well?
Yeah, certainly, and they're not going to be able to force a decision. It's going to be a matter of decision from Department of Infrastructure, or if it's another department and a different type of piece of infrastructure that another department's responsible for, or even if it's a piece of local infrastructure owned by an LLC, for example. There could be a number of things. And part of it is just diffusing the knowledge about this stuff, because really, this stuff is just practical wisdom. Make your buildings or infrastructure or whatever it is just really, really resilient to weather generally. So,
thank you. All right. So are there any other questions about the implementer and securing the implementer? It's going to happen in a hurry because the end of the month is coming. If the motion passes. Any other questions or discussions about this motion to use the ETF funding? Any to note? And on the phones? All right, we're ready for the question, and with your generous permission, we will do it the same way we did for the last motion and go individual by individual, and you just say yes or no, or yay or nay, however you want to word it. So once again, maybe we'll reverse it this time. So Carla's not the first one on the spot every time. Maybe we'll start in this room, and we'll go with, oh, we're missing one. So we'll let Annette when she comes back in. So we'll start with Winston.
Yes.
Yes for Winston.
Yes.
Yes for Jim. Dennis?
Yes.
Yes for Jim. We'll get Annette when she comes back. So now let's go to the phones. Wayne.
Which one?
Wayne McCoy. Yes. And then we'll go to Dick. Then we'll go to Wayne Sturgeon. Wayne Sturgeon. No audio from Wayne. Okay. Heather Hatt.
Yes.
Yes. Sam Walsh.
Yes.
Yes. And then we'll go to Alan McEachern.
Yes.
Yes. Then we'll go to Wade.
Yes.
And Ken.
Yes.
Carla.
Yes.
Back to Annette. Annette?
Yes.
Yes, you have your motions. Yes, you guys are awesome. Thank you. All right. So that was done and relatively painful, painless. Listen to me, relatively painful. Oh, Lord, have mercy. Okay, then we're going to move on to the financial report. It should be short and sweet because Mark went through the budget, so we know kind of where we're at. But Mark, if you want to present the year-to-date financial statements, that would just be awesome.
Certainly, I can do that. Our solid waste department has a surplus of $243,000 as of the end of July, and our U.S. revenue has been keeping us afloat, whereas the ICI sector has not been generating a lot of waste for us. For local planning, the surplus there is $42,394 to the end of July. And cooperative and regional planning has a surplus of $7,778. So we're trucking right along. We've seen some savings in our expenses. That's mainly because you can't do much with COVID. So training is down.
True that.
All right. Are
So
we
we're
tracking
probably,
along?
yeah, we're about where we'd expect to be this time of year.
Right about where we expected to be. That was going to be my next question. Are we tracking along right where we should be?
Yeah.
Perfect. Any questions for Mark about the year-to-date, well, not year-to-date, year to the end of July financial statements? No questions? All right. Are there any other, did you want to go through the income statement or balance sheet, Mark, or are we good?
No, I don't think so. We've had a little bit of cash flow difficulty. We haven't had to borrow anything, but our money's been tied up from receivables with the gas tax from construction. So the province released a big payment last week, so we're okay.
That was gas tax money that was previously applied for a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's that $4.5 million. So as we incur the expenses on the capital project for leachate, and we built the pond before, now we're doing the filter beds.
Yeah.
So Now we're finishing up on the project this year.
But they were a little slow releasing some of that
Yes.
money.
Yeah. And the trails money is pretty much dispersed for what we have. And there is still 100,000 that the province hasn't given to us. So.
And once that is dispersed from the province back through the trails, we're done with that in and out project?
Yes.
Maybe. Okay, thank you, Mark. I truly appreciate your time here tonight and the clarity you always bring. So then we'll go on to Finance and Audit Committee report, and Winston is the chair of that committee. So Winston, you present to us what you will.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, the first thing that we have on the list here tonight is we have the draft of the budget done up. And I would move that the board accept the recommendations of the Finance and Audit Committee to distribute the 2021 budget for the 45-day review period as required for municipalities and rural communities, and administer in this case of LSDs.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to distribute the draft budget that we went over tonight. Do we have a seconder for that? Dennis got his hand up for him. We got a motion and we got a seconder. Any questions about that draft budget or the motion? Any questions at all? Any questions? None to note. We're ready for the motion, and once again, with your consent, we'll go person by person, just say yes or no, or yay or nay, whichever your preference is. This time we'll start with the phones. Wayne McQuarrie.
Yes.
Yes. And then we'll go to Wayne Sturgeon. Nothing? Okay, Alan McEachern.
Yes.
Carla.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
Sam. Sam.
Yes.
Thank you, Sam. Heather.
Yes.
Wade.
Yes.
And we'll come to the room. Dennis.
Yes.
Winston. Yes. Jim.
Yes.
Annette.
Yes.
You have your motion to send out the draft budget for its 45-day review. Winston, you may continue with your report. If you
All
have any.
right. We have the Dennis would like an annual cost for each vehicle and for all equipment, mileage, maintenance, and figure out how it is to be utilized. And the reason for that is that we don't have all those things in place, and we'd like to put some of them in there. The next thing, Dennis questioned a meeting room in the basement of the Wall Street property. The building is approximately 2,000 square feet. He asked Hollis to get the cost to building a conference room in the basement. And we have, Hollis is going to be working on that. Thank you. And the rest of it is just, they're going to put vehicle logs in all company vehicles. And that is really pretty well it. That's my report.
Perfect. And the more details are in the papers that were in your package if you want to look through them a little more closely. Of course, as always, we get the Coles Notes version when we present. Are there any questions for Winston about the report that he presented? There was 2 Finance and Audit Committee meetings held. Any questions for him at all? No questions? With that being done, we would look for the date and time of our next regular meeting to be held the 4th Thursday per standing motion, the 4th Thursday of every month. In September would be September the 24th, 2020 at 6 p.m. right here in the boardroom for those who need it, and on Zoom for the rest of us. And I could be either place, but we will, unless there's a motion to change that, that's when it will be, September 24th, 2020 at 6 p.m. At this point, we do have to ask if there's any questions from the public because this was live. Are there any questions waiting for us? No questions waiting?
Does not appear.
Does not appear to be any. Okay, we'd be looking for a motion to adjourn. Dennis. Thank you all. It's good seeing you. Have a wonderful weekend.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Hey, Bill.
So we're gonna have something to eat next